Tennessee This Week from WATE 6 on your side starts now.
Well, coming up on Tennessee This Week, the spotlight on a city council race, Election Day, less than a month out. And Governor Lee's TennCare block grant proposal goes on the road. Plus, pushback to a plan to give a portion of city land for supportive housing. That's all on Tennessee This Week. Well, hello and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Blake Stevens, in for Kristen Farley. We're back to the ballot today, previewing what you can expect this November. Today, another race for Knoxville City Council, this time District 5. The candidates, Charles Thomas and Charles A-Bawi. Thomas brought in the higher vote total during the primary with 63% to 69% to 31% for A-Bawi. They both moved on to the November 5th general election. But today, they're my guests, so welcome the two candidates here. Thank you two for being here.
Oh, thank you for having us. This is an amazing opportunity.
And hey, it's, you know, not a weekend, so hopefully you guys didn't have any plans. So we thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's help the voters get to know you guys both a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to jump in the race for City Council. We'll start over there.
Well, it's a bit of a calling, actually. I'm a former city councilman for this district. Served 8 years ago. I've been off 8 years, but I've still been active in the community. During the 8 years I've been off, I've been on the MPC for 3 years. I've been with the Broadway Corridor Task Force. Currently, I'm on one of the committees for Legacy Parks. And prior to that, I served on the Transportation Board for CAT for 5 years. Was really involved in the Greenway Coalition and the Greenway Commission, building bike trails. Also involved in my neighborhood for very many years, Oakwood Lincoln Park Neighborhood Association. So it's actually just kind of a continuation of a calling I've had for many years.
All right, pose that same question to you. Why did you jump in the race?
You know, I've been blessed with many opportunities throughout my life. Owning a home in Lonsdale, to being a children's attorney, and being blessed with a supportive family and religious community that has allowed me to participate in so much. And I was encouraged, highly encouraged, to run for office, and I decided that it would be the right thing to do because it gives me an opportunity to voice my concerns, what's happening in this city, to the people who are suffering from poverty, from substance abuse, from violence and mental health struggles and the stigmas around them. We have to address these issues immediately. We cannot wait any longer. They are only going to grow and grow as they have in the past. What we have found is there are generational cycles in these issues, and there are meaningful steps that we can do to address them.
All right, well, we'll get on to some of the policy issues going on right now and some things you guys might see if elected. The first thing, the decision to ban gun shows from city-owned and operated property. I'm curious to know where you would have stood had that vote been yours. We'll start on that side again.
Yes, I would have been in favor of banning them on city property. I think the property that the city owns should be used more for educational, recreation, things that benefit the health of the community, and I just don't see the sale of guns being consistent with that.
I would agree. You know, the city shouldn't be using their properties to fund arms sales.
Well, and I spoke to the president of the company that puts these shows on. He says he will be exploring his legal options. You both have law degrees, so tell me, is the city on solid footing making this decision?
Yes.
Yes, as simple as that.
No question.
What do you think?
Well, I haven't done a legal analysis of it, but I hope so.
Well, I'm sorry. There are contract issues that may be at play. So if they have signed a contract with them that is still in effect, then of course there are legal issues.
But if they stop future booking dates, you don't see?
Then I don't see any legal issue. It's contracts.
All right, we'll just have to keep our eyes out and look. Well, let's move on to the Knoxville Police Department. Of course, there is a misconduct investigation going on right now involving that deadly officer-involved shooting. Of course, Knox County investigating, Knox County Sheriff's Office investigating. I know that you've been involved. We saw that you were involved in a protest immediately following this. What should be done in this situation and situations like this?
So first, we need to prevent these situations from happening. We need to make sure we have proper training for our police. We need to make sure we have the ability to de-escalate and that we have proper mental health services. Also, body cameras. Let's protect the police as much as we protect the victims and protect the city from liability. That's the first thing. Now, of course, this happened in the 5th District on Merchants Avenue, so the City Council needs to respond accordingly. We need to make sure that we let our residents know that we are looking out for them and we are working to protect them regardless of how people perceive it.
And I do want to do a better job of separating the two issues with KPD. You have the officer involved investigation, and then you have the misconduct investigation, internal investigation going on. So in terms of that internal investigation, what should be done over at KPD?
We just need to look through everything that's occurred and follow through on what needs to happen. And I think you're referring to the sexual misconduct allegations.
The official misconduct allegations, yes.
So yes, we need to protect our officers from being harassed on duty, especially by other officers who are superior in their positions. We can't let people take advantage of that.
All right, and on to you. I'll separate those two again. We'll start with the officer-involved shooting. What needs to be done in that situation?
I would agree with a lot of what Mr. A-Bawi said, and the training, the de-escalation, the officers have an extremely difficult job. They need to be trained as well as possible. I think that the body cameras are a step in the right direction, a huge step. It's become almost a normalization of process in cities of our size to have body cameras. I think it's protective for both the citizens and the police. You know, if a victim is wrongly injured by a policeman, we need evidence to establish that. Now, on the other hand, if a policeman is falsely charged with misconduct, the same would apply. So I think body cameras is just more evidence that we can have to evaluate these situations and get to the truth.
And so anything more to add on the misconduct investigation, the internal affairs investigation going on at KPD?
We should possibly look at a completely independent group to investigate them possibly. But no rush to judgment on these, but I think they should be very, very thoroughly investigated. What I read in the paper is actually appalling. If it's true, there should be no tolerance for that kind of behavior in our police department. But we need a thorough evaluation to get to the facts and operate on the facts.
All right, well, we're going to move on now to Recode Knoxville, something you two are both, I'm sure, very familiar with. Of course, zoning overhaul in our city. It's passed, but it was very controversial leading up to that final vote. It's sort of a done deal now, but I'm just curious to know if you guys agree with the process in which it was handled and whether you think it should be delayed from being implemented or changed. Start with you.
So let's talk about the process. We had the first vote this past August on it, and the city council members openly admitted that there were things in that ordinances that they didn't know, that they didn't understand, and that they were compromising on them just to get them passed. If that is the democratic process, then that's a democracy I don't want to be a part of.
And what should be done going forward? You don't agree with the process, but what should be done now that it's been voted on?
The city council needs to read the ordinances before they vote on them. It's that simple. Don't vote on something if you don't understand it. That is disrespectful to government and the people.
So you would support it repealing it?
I wouldn't. Look, the people have been involved in the process. There are things that need to be improved on. And I think there are things that need to be looked into, particularly they had to pass it again a second time on the first reading because they didn't understand the rules for commercial vehicles and personal property. At your home, you couldn't have had a limo driver, a food truck, or a school bus operator bring their vehicle home. And they didn't know that until they passed it the second reading.
All right, Mr. Thomas, what do you think of the process and what should be done going forward?
Well, it was about a 2.5-year process. I think probably the public should have probably been notified early on as with individual letters to the property owners. There have been about 90 meetings. The city council spent a lot of time on it. I attended from beginning to end some meetings that went to midnight. So I think they've tried to do as good a job as they possibly can with the overhaul on it. I would look at it fresh if I were a city council person, but there's some good things in it for my neighborhood. Whether or not the total package is passed or not, I'm going to be protective of a couple of things in my neighborhood in particular. And one of them, recode as it now stands, this section of it, and I'm not applying it to other neighborhoods, but parts of Oakwood Link Park are actually downzoned to protect single-family residences, and it would prevent multifamily units from coming right into the middle of the process.
So you would support taking another look closer at that map? Okay.
I would review it if I were on city council, but there's good qualities of it that I would be protective of, and it's let's keep what's good and let's fix what's wrong.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and gentlemen, before we go, we want to move on to our last question here. I'll give you both about 15 seconds to respond. Tell me, 15, 20 seconds, tell me what you're looking for in your next mayor and the next council you may be serving with. We'll start with you.
Well, I was on city council before, and it was the interaction among council members was very civil. Dan Brown was the mayor that I served under a lot of that time. And I would look for a council that is sincerely interested in the best interest of the public, and we had that then, and a council who are civil to each other and really try to deal with the facts. And we had that before, and I expect to have that again.
Deal with the facts. What about you?
What I'll say is I want somebody who is not going to use the budget as an excuse not to work for the people. They have money for the baseball stadium downtown. They have money for a dog park downtown, but we don't have money for affordable housing. We don't have enough money for community schools. We don't have enough money to address the issue of the wage disparity in this community. The budget cannot be used as an excuse. I want a mayor who will not do that, who will not say every time the people want something, oh, well, the budget doesn't allow it. But every time the developers want something, they'll say, okay, that's what I want.
All right. Well, sounds like you two know what you're looking for. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you again for your time. Still to come, state leaders take the TennCare block grant proposal around the state. Our panel of pundits is next. You're watching Tennessee This Week on WATE 6 on your side. Well, welcome back to Tennessee This Week. I'm Blake Stevens in for Kristen Farley. Well, it's time to hear from our panel of pundits. Joining me today, WATE 6 on your side healthcare analyst Craig Griffith, WATE 6 on your side political contributor Courtney Piper, and WATE 6 on your side political analyst George Corda. Boy, that's a lot of words, guys.
It is.
All right, well, let's start
But you got through it.
Yeah. Well, let's start with your thoughts on the District 5 race, the two Charleses. Start here to my left.
Well, it should be a fairly close race, but there's one candidate that has more experience. He's been in the office before, so I think that probably in the end he'll probably take that race because he has more experience and has a bigger base of supporters in the community.
Courtney, what do you think of him?
Charles A-Bawi is raising some very, very important issues that have become cornerstones of this entire city council and then also mayoral race with this current city campaign that we have going on. And so I think that it's great that we do have candidates that are elevating these discussions to where they become central points of a campaign. Charles Thomas, people know him, they like him, they're comfortable with him. He's been on city council before. And so, I think ultimately in a district race that might win the day.
George?
Well, city taxpayers who pay property taxes and sales taxes have certain things they expect from that. And among them are police, fire, codes, sidewalks, road paving, things of that nature. Charles A. sounded a little bit to me more like he was running for social worker than city council member. Yeah, those are meaningful things, but they are not what most people think about when they think about why they're electing a city council member. I think Charles B. here was more cautious, more careful. I think he understands that in all likelihood, if he doesn't foul up, he probably can win this. So he's playing it safer.
All right, thank you guys for chiming in. We're going to now move on to some state news. Governor Bill Lee's block grant funding plan for TennCare went on a tour around the state this week. with a series of listening sessions. The voices at the first of those were overwhelmingly against the huge change for the state's Medicaid program, with fears of benefit cuts and a lack of oversight. Lee said he wants people to read about it, understand it, and he thinks they'll be excited about it. Will they? That is the question. Does he need to build up public support? We'll start with our healthcare analyst here. What do you think?
Well, I took the governor's advice and I've read it. And the proposal really is more about dollars and cents, the money involved. It really doesn't, in my opinion, attack the two main public health problems we have in our state today, that one being the opioid crisis and two being the unfunded coverage. People who make too little afford to get into the healthcare exchange, but too much to get on Medicare. And it doesn't address that. So I think it's an attempt to pursue states' rights in terms of how you manage a Medicaid program. And they talk about innovation in it, and that's all good, you know, coming up with new ideas and things like that. But the proof's in the pudding. They'll have to create a huge new state bureaucracy to administer this program, because they're taking over a number of functions that are done by CMS at the federal level. So there's not really many details. There's not much meat on the bone if you read the proposal, and I think you have to get more exact, as they say, the devil's in the details, before you really can make a good, careful decision on whether it's best for the state or not.
George, is it about states' rights?
Well, typically, if you get things closer, the money closer to where decisions can be made that affect local people, you're generally better off. And there's a lot of argument over this issue with Medicaid. You got 1.4 million tenants, that's roughly 1 in 4 that are under Medicaid. And look, anybody who is administering this program is going to run into smack into the same thing Phil Bredesen did, which is you ultimately have to come to a point where you either cut the roll or cut benefits. Now, you can take money from the federal government, but that's not forever. You're going to wind up paying more in the long run. Healthcare is the Russian front of politics. As much as you put into it, it's going to take it all and demand more. And nobody has found the answer. But generally speaking, the closer you can get the money to where decisions can be made and get it out of Washington's hands, the better off you are, generally speaking.
Courtney?
Except this is not one of those cases. This is a bad plan, and Governor Lee can do better. And I know he can do better than this plan. What he's suggesting that we do is just take $8 billion from Washington, from the federal government, before any services are rendered. So he's saying, hey, give the state of Tennessee $8 billion. Before we even render services, we might not even cover services that the federal government would also cover. And then, you know, we'll split the savings with you. The problem is that Governor Lee also says that he's going to cut $2 billion from TennCare, and the only way to do that is if you cut people or cut services. Now, in the beginning of his plan, he says he's not going to do that, but once you read farther into it, he says that he might reduce services. So what this means is he might tinker with the amount of days you're allowed to stay in a hospital, which I don't think anybody in government has the right to tell you. You know, that should be a decision between you and your doctor, how long you need to stay in the hospital. Certain medications or therapies that are administered, the state might say, you know what, we're not going to cover those drugs. So it's a bad plan for Tennessee. We don't even know if it's legal to administer Medicaid dollars without any sort of federal oversight. So it just delays the thousands of Tennesseans that need health care. They don't have it.
All right, guys, we've got to take a break. Still to come, a dispute over the future of a piece of city-owned land. We'll talk about it next. You're watching Tennessee This Week on WATE 6 on your side.
Yeah.
All right, guys, welcome back to Tennessee This Week. I'm Blake Stevens, in for Kristen Farley, with a conversation continuing now with Craig Griffith, Courtney Piper, and George Corda. All right, let's talk about... All right, we're going to move on to Caswell Park, an issue going on locally. Pretty heated issue where the city is asking the City County Planning Commission to consider changing the current designation there to residential to pave way. I understand you're recusing yourself from this conversation.
Well, not recruiting, but I'm just want to let everyone know that I'm on the board of directors of the Volunteer Ministry Center, and that this is the project that we're endeavoring to partner with the city on in developing more affordable housing.
To expand more affordable housing, but the issues many people have is that they see it as taking away part of their park. So have you guys been following this argument, and where do you think it's going to go? Courtney?
Well, from the city's perspective, the parcel of land that we're talking about is not officially part of the park. And we do have a need in the city for more supportive housing. It gets people off the streets, and it reduces homelessness. And so from that perspective, and I understand that the location makes sense, okay? You've got access to services, it's on a cat line, it's in a walkable area, so it all makes sense. I don't think that the city and VMC just randomly decided to pick somewhere to mess with the neighbors or mess with the neighborhood. So if you're just gonna evaluate this based on location and need, this is a good spot for this kind of facility.
So it sounds like you're describing it as a win, two birds, one stone situation. George, do you see it that way?
Well, it depends. The neighbors, see, the thing about the neighborhoods is you'll generally find people who will say, oh, I'm for helping people and supportive housing, but not there. Can't you find another place for it? Because the idea of 47 single-family homes, apartments, to homeless people, people that they may be passing every day along Broadway, is not necessarily palatable to them. That maybe down there would be a little better. And this is what you're always going to run into. And that's not to say the neighbors are bad people, or they don't like people, or they're evil something. No. They're concerned about their neighborhood and the effect this will have on their neighborhood. And they have every right to be. So if the Volunteer Ministry Center wants to do this, they're going to have to convince that neighborhood that yes, here's what you're going to get, here's what we're going to do, and they're going to have to give them something.
But Craig, do you mind chiming in on this much? It's also strategic. You guys are looking at another property near that space, right?
Well, right next door to it, the Positively Living building that houses people with health problems. And we would like to build the new housing next to it for economies of scale in terms of operating that many more new units of affordable housing. So that's why this location seems to be, the city has come to us for, wanting us to come up with ideas for more affordable housing for individuals, and this is an excellent idea.
The issue among many homeowners has been about transparency with the entire process. More people want to feel like they've been included. They're not necessarily against more housing. So I guess my question is, do we have a transparent enough government, Courtney?
Over the last 8 years of the O'Hara administration, I've seen nothing but transparency from her administration and a commitment to transparency. So the answer is yes.
George, what do you think?
I think the neighbors have to judge that. And I think just like the O'Hara administration was not down here saying, let us come on Tennessee This Week and explain Recode, if they don't go to that neighborhood and say, here is why we're supporting this is why you ought to be for it, and this is what you don't need to worry about, then all of this transparency stuff is a sham.
Well, and they were there at the public meeting that we had 2 weeks ago on this issue, explain their position for it. So I think there has been discussion.
Go door to door, go knock on some doors, call a special meeting, say, I'm the mayor, I'm coming here, I'm going to answer your questions. You show up and I'll talk to you.
Yeah, I think the deputy mayor was at that meeting and did exactly that.
They provided
Who's pushing
lots
this, the deputy mayor or the mayor of Knoxville?
George, the mayor's one person. She can't be everywhere all the time.
Okay, I understand.
I mean, what?
I understand. Yeah.
What? You've worked for a city mayor administration. Can the mayor be everywhere at every given point in time?
Here's what I know. When a mayor wants to be somewhere, a mayor can be somewhere.
Okay, George.
And if a mayor feels she needs to be there, she can be.
Exactly.
Are you saying that Bill Lyons is not a competent spokesperson?
No, Bill is a terrific guy. He's not the mayor.
Who would have thought a park would have gotten us here? But hey, that's all right. That's It's the beauty of Tennessee this week. Well, I think that's our time, guys. We hope you'll join us next Sunday at 12:30 for more Tennessee This Week.
The views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or Nexstar Broadcasting.